it's Phil coming back at you with another video. Today, I'm back. I'm pumped up. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Practice self-care, not letting one thought, one situation take them outside of what they know to be true. And also letting go of the noise of what they tell you to do. You need to be so locked and loaded in what you think that if anybody tells you something that doesn't actually work for you, you're no longer falling temptation to that. And I know exactly 112 people have done just that since my last video. They went into the exam, kicked it directly in the chest to get the job done. A lot of people on this list were like, man, I'm not sure if I should do this, or man, another program told me that I'm not going to be able to do it. I have people in my life tell me I'm not going to do it. I'm telling myself I'm not going to be able to do it. My job's on the line. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be in social work. But once they set all of that aside, they did what they thought was true, went into the exam, almost thought that they weren't even getting the results that were supposed to be theirs because they've been told over and over that it wasn't built for them or that they weren't able to get it done. But 112 people went directly into the exam, ripped its heart out, and now will live the dreams that they want, following the heart that they have within inside of them. And they are as follows: Jessica P., Leslie B., Michelle P., Micah L., Caitlin P., Gail R., Tamara B., Charisse T., Simon M., Whitney C., Laura H., Morgan C., Jamie P., Ekim R., Kari S., Uganda M., Carly P., Kaya A., Shanoni N., Carly P., Stephanie B., Megan S., Charisse T., Barbara H., Genova R., Britt S., Anna F., Deanna D., Jenny L., Tiffany G., Marilyn R., Vicky P., Deborah R., Karen W., Mailer Gross C., Jononi J., Dora R., Caitlin C., Justine C., Glennie M., Byrne M., Tyler M., Toby T., Taylor T., Nikki G., Shelly S., Whitley F., Millie C., Jenny B., Jen S., Eden B., Manuel A., Kelly S., Casey B., Jennifer W., Alexis A., Cynthia C., Chelsea S., Courtney C., Blake B., Therese C., Shazanne M., Joey M., Lujuana J., Taylor A., Wendy T., Shan, Monica S., Caitlin M., Trina P., Run C., Maya C., Hillary H., Elisa G., Whitney B., Faith H., Alexa M., Kristen H., Anna C., Stephanie A., Jacob S., Perla L M., Samantha M., Kelsey H., JT, Alicia B., Christina A., Melinda B., Grace K., Jordan B., Tess G., Everine Joe M., Jennifer M., Brianna A., Deanna M., Broshana G., Alicia Y., H.M., Courtney C., Tanya V., Love S., Kirsten N., Stacy P.J., Martha J., N.Y., Emilio P., Erica P., Michelle D., Leah J., Julia P., Rachel G., and Sabrina S. I'm so excited, man, because so many people, like I said, on that list were like, man, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to do this. I'm not even sure if this is meant for me. And a lot of people on that list, it wasn't their first time. So they've been doing other strategies. They've been doing other techniques. They've been beating themselves down. But it was only once they doubled down, did exactly what they knew to be true, went into the exam, kicked it directly in the chest to get the job done. And if you want me to share your name as well, or if you've passed while repping and rock with me, the easiest way for me to be able to give you a shout out like that is send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, as well as if you're wondering, man, Phil, how can I rep and rock with you? Like, what are some ways that I can get involved with some of the things that you're doing? The easiest way to be able to do that is to attend the study groups that I have on Sundays. Why? Because it's every single week, and without caution or without any blip in the system, it is regularly occurring. And at the end of every session, there's a question and answer segment where you can directly interact with me. So if you're not able to get into my individual tutoring calendar, it's the easiest way to be able to connect with me. And you're like, Bill, I want to come to the study groups. They are at 7 p.m. Eastern time, And the topics that are coming up are as follows. 529, DSM-5 adult. So we'll be going over the personality disorders, the schizophrenia spectrum, bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2 disorder. and I might throw in some of the DSM-5 TR additional things like the grief disorder that was added into that. So that way, if it is on the exam, that you're not getting blindsided any way, shape, or form. 6.5, client intervention. So going over the individual therapy modalities, being able to allow for you to be able to recognize and apply those, as well as the family modalities. And again, not memorizing any information, but being able to recognize and apply it, going to the exam to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. Because at the end of all the sessions that I have, there are practice questions. So that way you're not just memorizing, you're not just generalizing, but you're being able to recognize and apply as it relates to a question. 6.12, acronym and practice questions. So going over the acronym that I recommend people to utilize, as well as going over practice questions. And if you come into this session expecting to get every single question right, it's not that I don't want people to do well. However, a lot of times people come in, they start getting questions wrong, and they start doubting their process. That's not the case. Why? Because the questions that I construct tend to be harder or more difficult than other questions that people have, as well as more difficult than the questions on the exam. So if you're looking for some good practice, that is another way to do that. The next one after that is 6.19, research, program development, and evaluation. So going over the different topics as it relates to research, going over program development and evaluation, as well as practice questions related to those. 6.26, practice questions. And if you're like, Phil, you just said 2 sessions with practice questions. Are they going to be the same? Or man, I was in a practice question session that you had before. Are they going to be the same questions? No, they're not going to be the same questions, because every session that I do tends to have new questions, because I never want somebody to be like, you know what? I've already went to one of his practice question sessions, so I can't go to another one, because I want to help you build yourself up to go into the exam to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. So if you've been in a practice question session before, it's going to be new questions. And as I stated before, those sessions are on Sundays from 7 p.m. Eastern time until they kick us out. And I don't really have an end time, because those sessions go until as far as they particularly need to. And they tend to be 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours, sometimes 5 hours long. And then there's a question and answer segment after that. So tends to be quite a beneficial session. And if you're like, man, I can't really stay the entire session, or man, sounds really helpful, but I'm a busy person, so I can't attend all the sessions, that's 100% okay, because when you register for the session, you're able to get the recording and the materials after the session to review on your own. And if you have any questions after that, you can always send me an email. So if you want any information about the Sunday study groups, about anything in general, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. It's the easiest way to be able to connect with me, as well as the link for the study groups will be in the description down below. So the description is the portion under the title of this video where it says view more, and it'll show you all the links that are available. I do still offer individual tutoring sessions, but as I stated before, my schedule tends to be quite hairy, so it tends to be pretty difficult to get a session. My sessions book out typically 3 to 4 weeks in advance, so please plan ahead as it relates to that. If you want any information about individual tutoring sessions, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, or click the link down below in the description, as well as the next one-day course. And I know a lot of times people are asking, man, when's the next one-day course? Or man, somebody said your one-day course was super duper helpful. When is the next one? The next one-day course is going to be on 6/18, starting at 11 a.m. Eastern time until they kick us out. And the last couple one-day courses have been going for typically around 12 to 13 hours. So I don't really provide an end time, but that trying to give you a picture of what that particularly could look like. And if you're not able to attend the session live, or if your exam is prior to 6/18, it's 100% possible to get the recording of the last one-day course. Or if you're like, you know what, my exam is after 6/18, I want to get the most current one-day course that you got. Well, it's 100% possible. And the one-day course reviews a multitude of different topics, so it doesn't review everything that can possibly be on the exam, but it gives you a good mixture. It goes over the tips I find most helpful for people to go into the exam to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. Most common reasons why people fail the exam, because what a better way to learn what not to do by learning from those that have made mistakes, because when you're making a mistake, it allows for you to identify what you missed and take that into the future to become the best possible version of yourself, as well as a different handful of topics. Subpoena versus court order, referral versus supervision, operant conditioning. We'll go over community organizing and the steps that align with that, as well as different DSM-5 diagnosis, personality disorders, schizophrenia spectrum, bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2 disorder. we'll be going over the medications, as well as we will be going over how to break down these questions, not memorize, not jump to conclusions, not get yourself riled and dialed up, being able to actually break down the question for what is there, reviewing the 5-step process that I recommend people to utilize to break down every single question, as well as the acronym, and then topping it all together with 25 practice questions. So if you're interested or want any information related to that, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com or click the link down below in the description. It should take you to the calendar, as well as be able to register on your own. And for those that do not know, Audible's continued to partner with me on my YouTube videos and my podcast. So if you want to support me as well as support them, go to my Audible affiliate link at www.audibletrial.com/fill-in-the-gaps. Sign up for the 30-day free trial. And it's the easiest way to be able to support me, and it costs you absolutely nothing. And if you're like, man, I don't want to type all that in, down below in the description, it'll have the Audible affiliate link. And if you're like, man, what is Audible? Audible's an easy way to get information on the go via audiobooks. So if you're busy just like me and you still want to become the best possible version of yourself, that's 100% the easiest way to be able to do that. Again, if you want to support me as well as support them, go to my Audible affiliate link at www.audibletrial.com/fill-in-the-gaps. Sign up for the 30-day free trial. It's the easiest way to be able to rep and rock with me. And if you're like, man, I'm going to sign up, I am going to get my free book with the 30-day free trial, there are a couple of books that I would recommend. The Alchemist, The Archer, Traumatized, and Outliers. Each of those have pieces of information that can help you become the best possible version of yourself as one, a professional, but also two, as a professional, because the goal is not to just be so career driven that we forget who we are, but that we become fulfilled in all areas of the lives that we have. As well as, if you haven't done it already, hit the like button down below next to the title, because it helps other amazing social workers just like you be able to rap and rock with me as well. As well as, do me a favor down below, leave a comment, something positive, something you took out of this video, something you're going through, whether you pass the exam or not. Just please, because people benefit from the comments more than you know. I definitely read all of them. Other people read all of them as well and get benefit from your experiences as well. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. Hit the bell notification next to it. Hit the bell notification next to it, because it'll ring every time that I upload a video, because you don't want to miss anything. As well as, if you haven't already or you did not know, I have a podcast called Fill in the Gaps on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify that has different resources as well. And like I say, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys for repping and rocking with me. And like I said, I hope to see you in the Sunday study groups, the one-day course, individual tutoring, or anything like that. But I'm not letting you go just yet. I want to go over a topic that is super duper 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 important, and not a lot of people do not really understand that exist, and that is going to be accommodations. So I'm going to go through what accommodations are. 2, what is the process to sign up for accommodations? 3, what do I recommend when you are signing up for accommodations to keep in mind? As well as, at the end of the video, I'm going to be doing some motivational type things, as well as what is the importance of accommodations and staying attuned to who you are. So let's segue into what accommodations are. And like I said, if you have any questions or anything, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. So let's segue into what accommodations are. Once you get to the ASWB testing site, there are multiple different ways to get to the accommodations screen. You can go to aswb.org/exam, go up to the exam tab, and then the first option under getting ready for the exam is non-standard testing arrangements. You can also go to Google, type in ASWB accommodations, and this will take you to the same exact screen. And if you notice, there are multiple different levels and layers to this page. It's kind of confusing. No one really has any idea what is actually going on. But the biggest key component is that they're like, you know what? We need to provide accommodations, yet there are also things that we have to keep in mind prior to even being able to do that. So they tell you to read the candidate rules agreement prior to even considering any of this. And you may be like, Phil, what the heck does this even mean? Well, if you click that link, it's going to take you to this page, the ASWB rules agreement. And a lot of times people have no idea what is going on with the exam. Different exam sources tell you different things of what you can actually do. This is what the ASWB or Pearson VUE, who is the testing source or vendor that they utilize, these are the guidelines that they're telling you. So just so that way you're ahead of schedule. But if you've already taken the exam before, you know exactly what this says. But if this is your first time taking the test, I want you to be as informed as you possibly can, and then we'll get back into what accommodations look like and how we can make adaptations to these different entities. So as it relates to personal items, you're not able to take anything into the exam with you in any way, shape, or form. You're not able to take your cell phone. You're not able to take your watch. You're not able to take any jewelry or anything in any way, shape, or form. So that's why I always say it's almost like a prison admission, because they are going to be doing like a pat down with you and taking everything away from you. They're going to be checking your hair. They're going to be doing all these different things to ensure that you're not cheating. So you're not just keeping all the stuff in the lobby, because they're going to let you take and give you a locker, and you'll have your license and your locker key. Those are the only two things that you can take into the exam with you, with a couple of exceptions. And I don't want you to go into the exam without having the idea of what this could actually look like. So if you're like, you know what, this doesn't really apply to me, I'm just going to put my stuff in the locker, that's A-okay. Because again, this is not the accommodation setup. This is the overarching rule and general thing for every single person. And the one that oftentimes blows people away, because other programs tell you like, man, you can get into your locker and you can eat and do all of these things. You absolutely cannot. So you're not able to eat, drink, or chew gum in the testing center or in the testing site in any way, shape, or form. And that's where you have to identify and understand that nothing is going to be allowed into the exam with you, with a couple of exceptions. In addition to that, you're not able to store anything that could jeopardize any of the property that they're talking about. So you're not going to have access to any of the personal items, and you're going to have a spill-proof container with all these different drink entities if you would like to. But again, only special certain circumstances are they going to let you get into your locker to access anything, because they're going to think that you're cheating and all those things. So that's where you have to kind of plan ahead. You have to plan and identify what are the things I'm going to bring in with me, what are the things I'm not going to be allowed to be brought in to the testing site. So that way it's not a blindside. So that's where in this situation, you want to be better prepared, because a lot of times people are like, man, well, I thought I could do all of these different things. And when you're getting the things that you thought that you would have in the exam with you restricted, kind of shocks you. In addition to that, they're not letting you test or study in the testing center. You're not able to have anybody in the testing center with you. In addition to that, you're going to, and a lot of times people are like, man, I didn't know that was a possibility. You will have access to a couple of things: an erasable notebook, booklet, a marker, and that's pretty much it. So that's the thing, is you cannot write on it prior to the exam beginning. So a lot of times people think, you know what, I'm just going to throw up all the things that I know onto this particular booklet, and then I'm going to start. That's not the case. In addition to that, you are only able to take notes on that, and you're not able to write down exact wording to the exam content. So that's where a lot of times people get tripped up, is they're like, well, what do you mean? But don't let that deter you from being like, you know what, I've been repping and rocking with Phil. He tells me to identify the key details, compare the answers back to the question to get the job done. That would not be the exact wording, because you're not writing out exact questions on the whiteboard or the booklet, because some testing sites have whiteboards, some have booklets. In addition to that, you're not able to speak with anybody. And if you want any attention from the administrator, you had to put your hand up in the air. Because a lot of times people get frustrated. They're like, man, I was trying to get their attention. They didn't really notice that I needed it. You have to put 5 big ones up into the air, and then they will help you out. In addition to that, the test administrator is the person that's going to be logging you in. But that does not mean that they can slap start for you. If somebody tries starting the exam on you prior to you being ready, you got to check them and say, not the case. You have to alert them that that's not what the expectation is. Because there is an untimed time portion of the exam that is beneficial to a lot of people, which is the tutorial. So do not let somebody just be like, yep, you're starting the exam today, because it's not their test. In addition to that, there are no scheduled breaks. So when you are studying or when you're preparing for the test, you want to ensure that you're building in how you're actually going to be taking the test. Because sometimes people are like, man, Phil, I took the practice exam, but I was eating, I was chilling, I was taking breaks, I was kicking my feet up, and I wasn't doing it all the way through. Because if you're not prepared for the length of the exam, or if you're not prepared on how you actually are going to take this thing, you're probably going to get blindsided in some way, shape, or form. In addition to that, you are going to remain in the testing center. You're not able to leave the building or anything along those lines. The only facilities that they let you access during your break are the restroom. So that is where you're not roaming, you're not talking to anybody, because you don't want to disqualify yourself from the test. In addition to that, based on all the different things that they've told you, It is all based on you doing what they are letting you do. But they don't really explicitly tell you this, because I doubt many people are sitting down and being like, you know what? I'm totally going to be in a good game. But in addition to that, they're going to erase all the stuff that is on the whiteboard because they're afraid that you are going to cheat. In addition to that, they're going to scan your palm prints on the way out. They are going to scan your palm prints on the way in as well. So when you go into the testing site, they're going to call you up to the desk. You're going to say who you are. They're going to have you sign a sheet that says you're not going to cheat. They're going to scan your palm prints. They're going to pick them up. They're going to put them down again, pick them up, take you across, and then they're going to take your picture to prove who you are. But in that moment, you have to identify that it's going to occur. They may want to search your hair if you have longer hair. They may be searching your glasses so that way they don't feel like you're recording the exam. They're going to have you take everything off, and you are going to have to utilize the bare minimum within the situation. And in this moment, you are not going to get your results on the screen any longer. You're going to have to go to the desk, and they are going to give you the unofficial score report prior to leaving the testing site. In addition to that, this is where they start identifying where accommodations and things can occur. So testing irregularities, because I hear this all the time. Man, Phil, you would never believe people were being super loud. The fire alarm went off and all these different things. So people jump up and say, I'm going to advocate for myself. But you have to understand that when you sign that sheet, these are some of the things that you're agreeing to. And of course, I was like, man, I'm going to talk about accommodations, but I don't want you to be like, you know what? I don't even know what to expect. Because how can we get accommodation to something if we don't know what we're being held up to at that moment? So in this instance, if any issues occur, you have to let the test administrator know. So again, if the test administrator hits start on you, you have to inform them. I did not want to start the test at, you started that, and I need you to start this over. Because if you continue on and then at the end of the exam say, well, they started the testing on me, so I should probably be able to retake this. You have to address it at that given moment. So in addition to that, you have to notify them within 2 business days of anything going wonky with your exam. Because it's after that date, they're going to be like, tough luck. So that's where you have to also understand. But in addition to this, because testing sites aren't perfect, that this is the craziest part to me, but this is what they're holding you up to, is that there has to be an issue at the testing site for 30 minutes. Because anything shorter than 30 minutes, they don't really think it's that jarring for whatever reason. So if there's a fire alarm ripping off and it only lasts for about 10 minutes and then you have to go back into the test, guess what? You don't have a resolution situation as it relates to a problem in the exam. Do I agree with that? Absolutely stinking not. Is it what you're being held up to? Yes, it is. But I don't want you to get angry and frustrated that you feel like the ASWB is against you. And some of the things that can occur, technical difficulties, exams flashing off and on, noise. Again, if somebody's talking like they're giving a speech, that's probably going to be an issue. Another issue could be any of these different things. But again, remember, you have to notify the ASWB within 2 days, but the issue has to be 30 minutes or longer. I've had people where the power went out for 20 minutes and they still had to complete the test. Of course, their mind is all jarred and riled and dialed, but knowing that you don't really have anything to stand up to the ASWB against. So being mindful that if you are not meeting these 2 criteria, the ASWB is probably not going to be on your side. So that is what I also recommend, is being informed that what is going on and what the regulations are. Because if you wait 3 days, ASWB is not on your side. If it's not 30 minutes or longer, ASWB is not on your side. Does it suck? 100%. Do you have anything to fight back on? Absolutely not in this given moment. But in addition to that, the test administrators can't help you answer questions, or they can't help you answer anything outside of the technical issues that may occur. But in addition to that, as I stated before, they have you sign your signature to agree to all these things and essentially saying that you're going to cheat or you're not going to cheat. But in addition to this, they require you, as I stated before, to submit a signature to say you're not going to cheat. You'll have your picture taken. And a lot of times people are like frowning in these pictures. Be excited. You studied so long to get here. In addition to that, you allow your palm prints to be scanned. In addition to that, you must agree to the terms of conditions and confidentiality. And what that looks like is you're not talking about the test outside of the test. Because a lot of times people get so riled and dialed that they forget, oh yeah, there's confidentiality. I can't be sharing questions outside of the test. that's a problem. But in addition to that, when you're taking the test, you're going to be monitored 100% of your days. In addition to that, any disruptions or anything going on as a result of what you're doing may forfeit your exam fee. So if you're the person that is clapping, tapping, doing all these things that could be distracting to other people, you got to kind of check yourself and say, man, I may have to make some adaptations into my behavior. And of course, I'm getting into the accommodations in a little bit, but I want to make sure that you understand what you're being held up to and how I recommend that you can make adaptations to better fit who you are. In addition to that, you're not able to leave the building in any way, shape, or form. In addition to that, you are going to provide your identification prior to leaving. So if you need to utilize the restroom, you have to do the check-in process all over again. They're going to check your license. They may have you do your palm prints again. So being mindful that you need to calculate the time that it may take for you to go to the bathroom and do all of these things. I don't want you to hold the bathroom usage until the end of the test, because if you've ever had to use the restroom and you're chilling on it, it's painful, and your distraction is all the way to the right-hand side. So you need to be mindful of what you're doing. But in addition to that, you may not remove any of the answers, questions, or anything related to that. And I know it's normal for people to be like, man, I'm going to share all these questions that I had during the test. You got to be making sure that if you're sharing those things, it's only with yourself for the learning possibilities. You're sharing it with somebody else, and somebody else at the ASWB finds out, you may lose your license prior to even getting it. In addition to that, just making sure that you're aware that all your privacy and all of these different things are being upheld. So those are the things that you're being held up to. So that is where, when it comes to accommodations, you have multiple different ways that you can apply for accommodations. There are disability or other needs and English as a second language. And English as a second language is a difficult one. Why? Because not every state has the same protocols and all these different regulations. Even the ASWB is up front of some states and provisional state social work boards allow special arrangements for candidates who use English as a second language, but not every single one does. And the difficult part is they don't really tell you which states do or not. And I didn't get a response back from the ASWB, so don't be like me and Phil, you should be telling us which ones. I try my best. I'm just trying to help, because accommodations are something that I'm starting to see more and more and more, but people are also judging themselves whether they should take it or not. So disability or other needs can have a multitude of different areas that you can see. And what do I mean by this? You can have a physical limitation, a mental limitation, or any of these different areas that may be useful in your exam. And what do I mean by that? Because if you're somebody that maybe have a mental health diagnosis or a physical health diagnosis or even a learning disability, and you're like, man, I'm just not going to use accommodations because I think it's going to reduce my ability to pass the test. It's like, would you tell a client that you're working with that they shouldn't get the services that they need based on who they are? Absolutely not. So that is where, if you notice, the ASWB is not really telling you a whole lot of what you can actually qualify for. And as I always say, knowledge is a privilege. It is a privilege to know what to expect. So of course, when I'm preparing to do this video, I'm like, man, how can I best explain this to the individuals that need it? Well, the ASWB does have the test and accommodations that could be available. Are they readily available to everybody? Absolutely not. You got to kind of dig through it. But let's go through what the accommodations can look like and what that process looks like. So as it's related to, and some of this information is going to be repeated, but I want to make sure that you guys are well aware. So in this situation, they state that any accommodation must not restrict their experience of delivering the exam equally in any way, shape, or form. So that is where accommodations must be provided to everybody that qualifies for them. Yet the ASWB, if you've ever tried applying for accommodations, tend to be a little restrictive on what they're actually able to provide. So in addition to that, when it is being offered, it can be offered as extra time. And you're like, man, Phil, what does extra time look like? Well, you can get up to 4 hours of additional time based on whatever accommodation you need. So if you're like, man, I'm running out of time, I'm finding myself losing focus, you can get up to 4 additional hours on the exam. So that means your exam wouldn't be 4 hours, it would be 8 hours. You can also get special proctoring. And you're like, man, what does that look like? Well, if you're somebody that finds it difficult to process the words, or you need accommodations for a reader, you can get either an electronic reader or another person in the room that is going to read the exam to you. So if you're like, man, I really lose focus on reading the words, but it's helpful if somebody would read it to me, that's a possibility. In addition to that, you can get a separate room. So all of those noise things that you're like, man, I'm somebody that makes a lot of noise. I like to read the questions out loud because I'm an auditory learner. Well, guess what? You can get a separate room and not get disqualified for being who you are. And as it states, you can have readers or writers. So if you're somebody that gets a pencil and paper exam, because again, that's a possibility, but not everyone knows about that, you can have somebody read the test to you and actually circle or highlight the answers for you within the situation. Or if you're somebody that's like, man, I find it really difficult to look at the screen and be able to see it, or man, I look better when I have a piece of paper in front of me, you can get large print versions of the exam. And it's at no cost to you. So that's where you have to be informed on this stuff. But in addition to that, if it's being requested, it must be on a case-to-case basis. So that's what I mean. ASWB may give somebody accommodations, and another person, they might fight back on the person getting accommodations. But in addition to that, it states they must make necessary determinations of reasonable and appropriate accommodations, including those provided under applicable law related to individuals with disabilities in the United States, in human rights legislation in Canada. No extraordinary accommodation shall be made. So extraordinary is all dependent on the person. So that's where we are not looking for equality, we're looking for equity. But in addition to that, and I'll get into what this form looks like in just a little bit, is that it must be identified by a qualified professional. In addition to that, what is the accommodation that is needed? In addition to that, what does it look like as an impairment for that individual? So the key component here is we do not want to have a dual relationship or conflict of interest. So the professional service provider must have no other relationship with the candidate, such it can't be a family member, direct supervisor, teacher-student relationship, etc. So each of these things I'm going to go through individually, but just kind of plant the seed of what it's going to look like. What does a formal medical or mental health diagnosis look like? And it must be confirmed within the past 3 years. So if you have a history of a mental health diagnosis, yet you've not been following up with treatment, it's going to be rather difficult for you to do it. You would have to see another treatment provider in some way, shape, or form. So if you're like, man, I know that I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Man, I know I have generalized anxiety disorder. Man, I know I have post-traumatic stress disorder. Or no, man, I know that I have a learning disability. If you don't have it formally diagnosed, it's not going to be beneficial in this situation. They're also going to have to identify the date of onset, any limitations identified, as well as what are the accommodations. And I'm going to say it again. Your professional must be as specific as they possibly can. And what does that look like? Because a lot of times people are like, man, I just want additional time. The ASWB is going to interpret it at that moment. But if you're like, man, I would benefit for 1 extra hour, 2 extra hours, 3 extra hours, 4 extra hours, a reader, additional opportunities such as a paper and pencil exam or a separate room, your provider must be as specific as they possibly can, such as Phil would benefit from 2 extra hours and a separate room based on the limitations related to X, Y, and Z. But if they're like just additional time and possibly a different environment for them to take the test, the ASWB may not be able to accommodate that because it may be extraordinary possibilities. Or you may be thinking that you're getting 2 extra hours, but they're just going to give you an extra 30 minutes. That's bad moves, bad vibes. In addition to that, if it's not been required before or you've not applied for accommodations before, you must justify why you're doing it. Why? I don't really agree with this, but at the end of the day, you just want to be informed that they may push back on that. But if you have a provider that has credentials such as a doctor, social worker, psychologist, counselor, etc., they're not really going to fight with a professional in that particular manner. So if the disability is related to a learning or psychiatric disorder, the candidate must also submit written verification of the accommodations provided through student disability services at the educational institutions attended. And this is where it's particularly tricky because in one breath, they're going to say that if it's never been identified before, that you don't need the educational institutions verification. And in here, they say that you need it. So if you've ever gotten accommodations from your university, then that could be a good place to start. If you've never done that, then you may have to understand that the ASWB may push back on that. However, don't let that deter you or make you fall victim to them just being like, nope, doesn't really apply. However, you want to make sure that it is a specified disorder. So such as unspecified anxiety disorder would not fit. Testing anxiety does not fit. It must be provided in a DSM diagnosis. So a lot of times people are like, man, I think I have anxiety. Would you qualify for anxiety disorder? Have you had 3 symptoms within the past 6 months of excessive worry, muscle tension, finding it difficult to concentrate, irritability or shouting at people, sleep disturbance, etc.? If so, guess what? Generalized anxiety disorder. And if you have a professional that is willing to help you, that is a good spot. But again, if accommodations aren't what you're looking for, then I wouldn't push it and be like, okay, well, I need to get accommodations because this person's telling me I need to get accommodations. You must feel like you need them in your own mind, as well as the association must receive it from somebody that is deemed reasonable after qualification of the candidate. So at the end of the day, what that means is that it must be from a credentialed professional. In addition to that, it must be deemed by the association to be inappropriate or not reasonable because of security or validity reasons. And should the matter be contested by the candidate, the association shall provide professional advice and legal consultation in support of the decision. So stated in this way is if they feel like it's unreasonable, they're willing to kind of help you out, but they're going to guide you in a decision that they think is right. So if they're pushing back on you, you may have to get your professional or provider involved in this discussion and not just have yourself do it by yourself. But in addition to this, we need to remind ourselves that expenses related to the accommodation are not going to be put forth on you. So if you need accommodations, it's not coming out of your pocket. As well as a key component here is that the accommodation form is going to be valid for 1 year. So if you take the exam, you do not pass the exam, yet you want to take it another time, you don't have to go through the accommodations process all over again. However, if you apply for accommodations, you don't pass the exam, or you just don't take the exam within that year, you have to start the process all over. Let's segue into the possible accommodations. And as I stated before, they're not super duper specific or intentional or deliberate with them. However, these are some of the things that we can kind of make adaptations to. So this is where the association is committed to ensuring that accommodations provided for candidates with visual impairments, including readers, give candidates an equal opportunity to successfully complete the examinations while assuring the validity and security of the exams, because they're super duper worried that people are going to cheat or make adaptations to the test. So per the policy, candidates with visual impairments may choose from among the following accommodations available for the social work licensure exam administration. So paper and pencil test booklet, either standard print 12 point or enlarged 18 or 24 font, as well as we can have an enlargement technology approved by the testing site. You could have Braille. You could also have extra time up to 8 hours. So again, up to double time. So 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, or 4 hours. You can have a private room, a qualified reader, audio recording, or currently approved and available technology provided by the association or its testing contractor. A flexible starting time for the examination if necessary to allow for a pre-examination meeting between the candidate and the reader. So if you have a reader, do yourself a favor and ensure that the ASWB is scheduling that pre-screening, because a lot of times people are not having that pre-screening, and you're not sure if the reader's going too quick, going too slow, messing up words, etc., because you want to make sure that you give yourself the best possibility of collaborating with the person. If your reader makes you more anxious and you're not willing to advocate for yourself and say slow down or go faster, it's kind of taking you outside of what you know to be true. In addition to that, for candidates with visual impairments who choose readers, the following policies apply. So this is the qualifications of what it takes for somebody to be a reader. So readers must have the following qualifications: hold at least a high school diploma and be 18 years or older, be able to read aloud test materials accurately and intelligibly to up to 8 hours. And that's the key component there, is if there is a problem with your reader's making jokes, your reader's not reading it correctly, your reader's messing up or not listening to the instructions you're giving, put 5 big ones in the air, notify the ASWB, because that could be one of the times where the interruptions could allow for you to reschedule the test or advocate to get another reader the next time. Also, the reader have studied the written instructions that have been provided to readers, as well as familiarize themselves with the technology, terminology, etc., a part of the exam. They're also willing to meet with the candidate before the examination. If your reader's not willing to meet you prior to the exam, guess what? Probably not a good reader for you. In addition to that, to ensure a good working relationship between the candidate and the reader, the association shall adhere to the following procedures. Upon request from the candidate, pre-examination telephone conference and or face-to-face meeting to allow for practice reading will be arranged. And if you notice, it says upon request from the candidate. The ASWB is not going to be like, you know what, this is protocol, have a nice time. You have to request it on your own. In addition to that, specific written instructions for readers, including instructions regarding appropriate interaction with candidates and how to read the examination, will be provided. So during that meeting, you'll want them to practice reading a couple of questions. Let them know you're going too quick, you're going too slow, so that way they have a rhythm prior to doing that. And on the testing day, you can also have them read a couple of questions to see is their pace still accurate to when you met them. So if after communication with the reader proposed by the association or its testing contractor, the candidate concludes that the reader will not be able to effectively communicate with him and or her during the course of the examination, the candidate must notify the association of the problems in order to reschedule his and or her exam with another reader. So advocate for yourself. If the reader's not meeting your needs, guess what? Change the reader, please. You're not going to hurt their feelings because you don't want to hurt your own feelings and go into the exam and fail if you have a reader. Upon request from the candidate, and when available, the association may provide the candidate with a description of the assigned reader's previous reading experience. In addition to that, a meeting will be held with the candidate, the reader, and the test center personnel prior to the examination to clarify the procedures, including the time parameters of the test administration. The test center personnel will clarify that the candidate is permitted to ask the reader to write notes, especially if the candidate has no tools or equipment for taking notes or is unable to do so. So you do not want to have somebody that's supposed to be helping you out doing the absolute least. In addition to that, you want to ensure that a proctor shall monitor activities during the examination. The reader shall have an opportunity to evaluate the reading experience, as well as to ensure the security of the ASWB exam. The reader must agree to follow procedures for secure test administration approved by the association. So that is what that looks like. And again, the ASWB is not doing you a favor in outlining every particular thing within the situation. You have to kind of have the knowledge and experience to give yourself the best benefit to go into the exam to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. So let's get into what it actually looks like to apply for accommodations. And I know this has been a long-winded way of how to apply for accommodations. I just don't want anybody to get blindsided or not be informed on what they can actually get as accommodations. So some of this information is going to be relatively similar to what we've already gone over. So skipping all of this stuff, basically arrangements must be reasonable and cannot under any circumstances alter the ability of the examination to adequately assess entry-level competence nor alter the format of the exam. So if you're wanting them to change questions and all those different things, that's going to be totally out. But if it's allowing for you to utilize the same information and the same questions, it's going to be in the green. So in addition to that, we kind of already went over this of the standard exam administration of what they're holding you up to, but the format of the exam is 4 hours and 170 multiple choice questions. 20 of them do not count, but you're still going to want to answer every single one of them. As well as, based on it, no accommodations in any way, shape, or form. You're utilizing a computer, mouse, and keyboard. You're only basically going to be utilizing the keyboard and mouse because the ASWB exam, both master's, clinical, bachelor's, etc., are not going to require you to utilize a keyboard. As well as, you may take short breaks, but it does not stop the time. So testing time does not stop for breaks. We already went over the agreements, but in this, documented disabilities are protected under federal law and or state law and generally apply to people who have physical, mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So that's where we would have a provider step in and describe this. So other needs that require you to request non-standard testing arrangements may include monitoring devices for diabetes, ambulatory arrangements for a broken bone, and additional breaks because of pregnancy. And we'll get into the lactation accommodations in just a second, but just keep in mind that this form is not going to tell you what accommodations you can apply for. Why? Because from my view, they want to keep it as cryptic as they possibly can, because if they advertise all of the accommodations, guess what? They're going to have a storm of people wanting to advocate for themselves. So it's easier to kind of restrict knowledge and then help people, or hope people don't find the information. But also keep in mind that if you have an ASL or American Sign Language accommodation, you have to complete this form as well. But in addition to this, ASWB will work with candidates with other health conditions or needs to reach an agreement or relevant arrangements. But that's the key component here, is ASWB reserves the right to deny non-standard testing arrangements under this category if at the sole discretion of ASWB, essentially stating you don't meet the criteria we think that you should meet. Guess what? You're not getting the accommodation. That's why I always say, make sure you have a professional that's willing to advocate for you and be as intentional and deliberate and specific as they possibly can. And with the accommodation form, it tends to be rather tricky because there are two parts. One is that you have to complete it, and another part is where your practitioner or professional has to complete it. But in addition to that, you're the one that kind of has to submit all the documentation. And we'll go through each part, but also knowing that you have to have a personal statement of what diagnosis or multiple diagnoses do you have, what condition and or needs, and how daily activities are affected. So even though you filled out the form, and even though your professional filled out the form, you still have to describe what they're actually reviewing on this form. So do not miss out on this, because a lot of times people complete parts 1 and 2 and they forget the personal statement. You will also want to list the accommodations you're currently receiving or have received in the past. So if you're in a work environment and you have accommodations, you want to identify those. You want to be as specific as you possibly can of how long this diagnosis or disorder or adaptation in your life has occurred and what it actually looks like in multiple areas. So if you've taken the ASWB exam before and not had accommodations, you must describe why you need the arrangements now. And again, don't let this personal statement defeat you, because I know a lot of times people are like, man, the ASWB must be questioning why I need this accommodation if I've never taken it. Don't let this stuff deter you, because I hear all the time, man, Phil, I was afraid to apply for accommodations because of how long it takes to process it. I was afraid to apply for it because I didn't want them to deny my reality. Don't let that stuff get to you, because you need what you need based on who you are. In addition to that, learning disability evaluation report. If requesting non-standard for a diagnosed learning disability, you must submit the evaluation report from the practitioner who made it or confirmed the diagnosis. So if, again, remember, it's a 3-year rule. So if you were diagnosed with a learning disability in the past and you're not currently seeing the provider that did it, you may have to have another provider confirm it if it's not within the last 3 years. In addition to that, to avoid a delay, you must submit all parts of what they are requesting. And a quick review of that is part 1, part 2, and your personal statement with all these different details and criteria met. And all the information for this will be in the description down below, but also knowing that the ASWB will notify you and process it, and it can typically take up to 2 weeks. And I know that's kind of frustrating of like, man, somebody that doesn't need accommodations can just go on the website and everything's in the green. But knowing 2 weeks is typically the expectation. However, if they deny it or feel like it's incomplete, you have to give them the information within 60 days. So yes, accommodations can slow it down. Yes, accommodations can be a pain in the tail, but just knowing that if you need the accommodations and you know it in your heart, please take the time to do it, honestly, because it breaks my heart when people are like, man, I'm running out of time. I'm not really able to stay focused, or man, it would be really nice to be in a private room by myself because I just feel nervous when people are around me. You have to be willing to advocate for yourself, because you'd be willing to advocate for your friend or a client whenever they need it. But knowing that, you must complete this form with original ink. So if you're going to a provider, they must give you the copy that has the original ink. They are not going to accept copies or faxed signatures. So keeping that in mind as well. In addition, keep the form, because you never know when people are going to lose things. And I know it says to call, but like I said, I tried getting the English second language states. And when I tried calling this number, it just directed me to a voicemail. So I would recommend sending an email. And if they're not getting back with you within those like 2 days or whatever, I would send an email every single day. And when you do get your accommodation form, you have to mail it. You have to mail it. You have to mail it. So what that would look like is go into the post office, make sure you get tracking, because if the ASWB says they haven't gotten your form, guess what? Tracking is going to save your butt. But in addition to that, let's get into what parts that you have. So part 1 is your part to finish. Remember, part 1 is on you. So you fill out your name, your address, where you're at, your email address, your phone number, your date of birth, social security number. You also want to provide, if you're seeing one provider or multiple providers, you also want to put the provider above or multiple providers above, sign it and date it. And remember, it's valid for 1 year after you sign this. So if you don't submit the form for a couple months after you complete it, do yourself a favor and get another form. Why? Because you don't want to put yourself at a disadvantage. But in addition to that, these are kind of reviews of what we've already went over, but just kind of articulating it a little bit further. Again, the exam is 4 hours, 170 questions. You're utilizing computer and mouse. You can take breaks, but it doesn't stop the time. So if you're somebody that particularly wants to have breaks during your test and you have a reason for accommodation, this is an easy way to make the test more manageable with and for your situation. But also knowing that they don't list what accommodations exist right now. So it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Kind of a pain in the butt. But remember, you can get additional time. You can get a separate room. You can get a reader. You can get a writer. You can get a paper and pencil exam. So if you get a paper and pencil exam, you have to wait for your results. So it's not immediate results, and you'll get the results in the mail. So which again is kind of a pain in the butt. However, if it's what you need and that's how it works for you, that is what I would recommend. So again, the key ones, additional time. You can get up to 4 hours, so you can get 8 hours to take the test. You can get a separate room. You can get access to a locker. So again, without accommodations, you can't get access to that locker. So with that access to the locker, you can get food if you want to. You can get drink if you want to. You can additionally get any medications that you particularly need if you need them. So that's the thing, is if you're like, man, yeah, I check all those boxes, or man, the last time I took the exam, I thought I was going to fall out because I didn't have enough food prior to going into the exam and I have a medical condition, guess what? You can get accommodations to kind of bridge that gap. But also knowing, kind of a quick review of this, it must be done by a professional or somebody that has a credential, doctor, therapist, etc. But also knowing that if you have any questions, do the email route. If you call them, it'll send you to a voicemail, and they say it's not really monitored, so it doesn't really help you. And you must mail in the results of the accommodations to the ASWB. They'll respond to you within 2 weeks. And knowing that, the part 2 section is where your professional must complete it. So they'll put your name, put your date of birth, put your social security number, put the diagnosis and or multiple diagnosis that you've had, when they diagnosed it, when they last saw you, any of the limitations that exist. And this is the section that means the most. Why? You want them to be as specific as they possibly can. How much extra time do you need? Don't just have them put extra time. Have them put specifics. 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, 4 hours. Separate room, reader, writer, any of these different adaptations. Access to a locker, all these things, because you never, ever, 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 ever want to put the interpretation up to the ASWB if there's any medical devices that need to be with you. In addition to that, when are they being accommodated for? When it's somebody that is pregnant. In addition to that, what are some other things that may occur? Or if it's something that's physical health, when is it planned to recover? They'll sign it. Again, you want the copy that has the pen, not a copy or faxed version. And that is what the form looks like. So you want to make sure that you're informed, you're intentional, you're deliberate, you're not letting things go to the wayside. Because again, you want to make sure that you're getting your accommodations met, not just leaving it up to anybody. And again, if you notice, nowhere on this form does it state the accommodations that you particularly can get. And that's what frustrates me as much as it possibly can. Because They don't really tell you what you can get, and it's up to interpretation. And as it relates to requesting English as second language, as I stated before, they don't really have a specific, so you'll have to email them and say, hey, I live in this state. Does this actually qualify for English as second language? The lactation arrangements are very similar to the other accommodations, but they're more locked in. So they'll allow you to have access to a locker. They'll give you 60 minutes of extra time. Again, is that enough? I'm not really going to comment on that, but I'm not somebody that thinks that 60 minutes is enough. They'll allow you to have a designated place. They'll allow for you to have water and a spill-proof bottle at the testing desk, not even right next to you, and you'll also need permission to leave the testing center. So that's the key component there is, are these accommodations actually meeting the need of somebody? Not necessarily, but at the end of the day, knowing that if you need this, making sure that you apply for the accommodations, because you could have the 60 minutes plus have your provider advocate for more time in the situation. And then on the Pearson VUE website, again, kind of tells you what accommodations exist, extra time, separate testing room, and breaks. But again, it's not super particular or specific on what actually exists within your situation. And just with the ASWB, you have to scroll down though. And it's like, okay, well, I have to document it. But under this approved comfort aids, when you click download list, that is where you can start identifying what accommodations exist inside of the exam. And I don't understand why getting access to this information is always such a pain in the butt. But here are some things that you can particularly utilize and what it actually exists. So the below items are comfort aids and do not require pre-approval. So they will be allowed in the testing room upon visual inspection by the testing center or online proctored staff. So visual inspection will be done by examining the items without directly touching it or the candidate and without asking the candidate to remove the item unless otherwise stated. So this is through Pearson VUE. So what medical and medicines can be provided or exist within the testing site? So auto injector, such as EpiPen, bandages, braces, neck, back, wrist, leg, or ankle braces, casts, including slings for broken and or sprained arms and other injury-related items that can be removed. Cough drops must be unwrapped and not in a bottle and or container. So if you're bringing in a cough drop, they are going to have you unravel it. You're going to put it on a Kleenex, and then you're going to be able to take it. You're also going to have access to eye drops, eye patches, eyeglasses without the case, including tinted lenses, must be removed for visual inspection. Glucose tablets does not include hard candy, must be unwrapped and not in a bottle or container. Hearing aids or cochlear implants, inhaler, medical alert bracelet, medical device must be attached to a person's body and be inaudible. If the device makes noises, then candidates must apply and be approved for an accommodation. So glucose monitors, insulin pumps, spinal cord stimulator, TENS unit, medical footstool. So candidates must bring a medical footstool for the purpose of supporting an injured leg or foot. The stool must be non-skid, have a metal base, and can be no larger than 14 by 14 by 12. So if you're somebody that's like me and I really need to prop my legs up or I get pain, that could be a way to have that without applying for the accommodations. Nasal drops and or spray. Oxygen tank must be self-contained and silent if the oxygen makes noise or if power is required. Accommodation is there. You can bring a pillow and or cushion into the exam. So if you find the chairs to be uncomfortable, that is a possibility. Pills, Tylenol, or aspirin must be unwrapped and not in a bottle and or container. So you'll bring that in and then you'll empty it and then put it on the Kleenex. And also, candidates may bring pills that are still in the packaging if the packaging states they must remain in the packaging, such as nitroglycerin pills, and that cannot be exposed to air. Packaging must be properly inspected. Additionally, additional information are not permitted to plug any device into the computer workstation if the medical device includes an accompanying external remote control device. The remote control device may not be taken into the testing room if there is a need to take the external remote control device into the testing room, including cell phone. Candidates must apply and be approved for an accommodation to do so. Additionally, there are a couple more. So mobility devices such as canes, crutches, motorized scooters, chairs, walkers, wheelchairs, etc. will be allowed without an accommodation. Because remember, this list is items that are available without the need for an accommodation. Other approved items, earplugs and noise canceling headphones. So that noise canceling or noise reducing headphones will be provided to you by the testing site. Earplugs are also an option. So if you don't like the pressure of the noise reducing headphones on you, you can utilize earplugs as well. However, these are only considered a comfort aid in Pearson professional centers and must be provided by the testing center. You can't just bring your own Bose, Sony, AirPod Pros, whatever you want to the testing site. They must provide it. For other testing channels, including third-party testing centers and online proctored, formal accommodation approval is required. So since we're going through Pearson VUE, we don't need accommodations or anything for earplugs and noise-reducing headphones. Additionally, face mask and or gloves, note, not permitted for online proctored exams, so we don't really have to worry about that. Also, handheld non-electric magnifying glass without the case. And what that would be helpful for is if you find it difficult to see the objects, you can bring your own magnifying glass in to help you out as well. And additionally, tissues and or Kleenex. So note, these are only considered a comfort item in Pearson professional centers, must be provided by the testing center, so you can't just bring your own box. You have to get them from the front desk. And for the online proctored exams, which do not relate to the ASWB exams, accommodation would be required. And based on that, those are going to be the things that are not required as it relates to items you can utilize without accommodations. As I stated, ASWB and both Pearson VUE have wild ways of just hiding the information away, so you have to go through additional steps. And this is current as of February 22nd, 2022. So this is all current information. So as I stated before, you want to make sure that what you're doing, you're aware of what is available to you. Never let anybody restrict what you're doing. And if you feel like you need to test in accommodations, do the right decision. That if you need the non-standard testing accommodations, that you should be intentional and deliberate. And kind of a quick review of the accommodations that you can get. You can get additional time, up to 4 hours additional. You can get a separate room. You can get access to your locker. You can get break time if you need it. It doesn't stop the time. And what do I mean about break time? Because a lot of times people are like, yeah, the additional time is included in the breaks. Not necessarily. You got to plan the breaks out on your own. So if getting the additional time and you're not planning for the breaks, but you're just planning on the questions, you have to really consider, what does this actually look like? Am I going to take a break? Am I not going to take a break? Because also when it comes to the exam, you can have tissues with you into the exam. So they're not going to let you have gum or food or anything like that. But if you know that you need a Kleenex during the exam, you can bring that in with you. They also allow for you to have cough drops if you particularly need it. Or if you're somebody that has medical accommodations for aspirins, ibuprofens, etc., you can bring those in the test with you. You have to bring the bottle. They'll empty out whatever is needed on a Kleenex, and then you can keep it in the exam with you. So being prepared for what this looks like. Because again, no one really tells you about accommodations. They just expect you to know it. They're like, man, just know the accommodations. It's A-okay. You'll be fine. Make sure that you advocate for yourself. Don't let this process deter you. And do not feel like that if you apply for these accommodations that your result is less valuable, because you are a valuable, uniquely gifted individual. So do not let one thought, one situation, one person take you outside of what you know to be true. So that is what the entire process of applying for accommodations looks like. And as I stated before, it could be a difficult process, stressful process, but knowing that if it is something that you need, do not let somebody limit what you need, because you're the only person that truly knows what you are going through. And never let one thought, one situation, one person take you outside of what you know to be true. And as I stated at the beginning of the video, I also have a couple of things on my mind that I want to get out there for people. And just right up front, I know that I've not been making as many videos, and I feel like I'm letting a lot of people down, honestly, because I know a lot of people come to these videos. They look for them for motivation. They'll look for them for reasons to continue going, and know that it's not something that's intentional. Be like, I'm done with this. It's just I'm going through a lot of things in my personal life. My mom's health is up, doing a little bit better, but it's still a day-by-day thing. The aunt that I talked about in the last video passed away. It's never an easy thing going through all of these things, but also trying to be available for everybody. So know that I appreciate every single one of you guys, but as it relates to accommodations, and I know this video is long, so if you made it to this point, just know that it's not lost on me. I appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'm going to give you guys everything that I got. And as it relates to accommodations, as I stated before, a lot of times people are like, man, do I really need accommodations? Or, man, I was going to plan for accommodations, but it's too inconvenient. Or, man, my friends passed the exam and they didn't need accommodations, but why do I need accommodations? And all of these different things. And the best piece of advice that I can give you is you got to block the noise out. You got to embrace who you are. And something that I was thinking about even before putting out this video was like, man, what can I say to convince people that they're already in a better position than they think that they are? And it just came to me and was, embrace who you are and do not race against others, because it will cause you to be who they are. So if you're doing what you think is right and you're running along like, man, wonder what that person's doing, or man, what my supervisor's doing, man, my friends passed the exam and this was what they did, you're going to start being them and lose you. Never lose yourself, because once you start losing yourself, you never can get back to who you are without great stress, with great adversity, with great guilt and shame, because you're like, man, I tried doing what they told me that would work. It didn't work. And you're not blaming them. You're blaming yourself. And that's the problem. Is a lot of times people will look at other people and say, I want to be where they're at, but they don't consider what's going on inside of them, or what it took for them to get there, or what their mission is, what their purpose is, because everybody goes through something, but we go through the required entities and the required events to get us to where we're supposed to be going. Not everybody's going to have the same life. Not everybody has the same access. So when it comes to accommodations, as I stated before, knowledge is a privilege. People need accommodations, but they don't know how to go about it. So then they continue to go down the road doing what other people have told them to do. They do what other people have told them that they should be making accommodations for. But you have to uniquely be 100% you and understand that you doing what somebody else is telling you to do, and if it doesn't work for you, just letting it go. But way too many times we hang on to things because we feel like it's creating security, but all it's creating is a hole inside of ourselves, bigger and bigger and bigger, because we ignore what we know that we need, but we stay with what everybody else is telling us to do. But guess what? Not everybody is going to stay in your life. Not everybody is repping and rocking with you. Not everybody is there to give you something. They're there to take something away. So you have to be discerning whether the situation should be of concern to you. And what I mean by that is, you're comparing yourself to somebody else that's not lived through the same things that you lived through. You're comparing yourself to somebody else, and they've not done the same things that you're doing. They're not having the same mission. They're not having the same drive. And you're like, man, Phil, I've already failed the exam multiple times. That's okay. And it's not that I want you to keep taking the test, but why I say it's okay is because you still have a heartbeat in your chest. You can let go of the rest and do what you need to do. But a lot of times people will take them failing a situation or making a mistake as a problem. But when you make a mistake or you do something incorrectly, that is what's going to teach you everything that you need for the rest of your life. Because when you don't do something correct, you start identifying different ways and solutions and missions that you can go on. But if you've never made a mistake, or you like to hide your mistakes, guess what? You're hiding your lessons and blessings away from your life. So you have to start doing what you know to be true, letting go of all that doubt, all that shame, and all the guilt. And it doesn't mean that you should suppress it. Again, I'm a social worker. I'm a therapist. I ain't never going to tell somebody not to feel how they're feeling, but you have to make sure that the feelings are based in fact. But a lot of times people will base their feelings on what other people are telling them to do, or they're letting the situations or the feelings override what they particularly need to be doing. But at the end of the day, if they doubled down and was like, you know what, this situation sucked, this situation was painful, this situation has drained me out of all the things that I need to be doing, but they also transplanted that pain into a larger situation, they are going to be in a better situation than somebody that's never been through something. So if you failed the test, you're not getting the jobs you want, you're not getting as many questions correct, I would rather have you get every single question incorrect, or not get that job, or not get that situation, because you're learning something from that pain, and you're also learning what you're worth. And what your worth is what you decide your worth is. But if you're compromising, or you're making adaptations or believing what they tell you to do, but you don't actually believe it, but you're throwing who you are away, what happens when that person's no longer there? What happens when that person's not there for you? What happens when you want to go back to who you were and you want to start a new project? You want to get into a private practice. You want to do all these things. But the problem is that you've changed the mainframe of who you are to accommodate to what they tell you to do, but they're not there to help you. The only person that is 100% there for you is yourself. It doesn't mean that you don't have people repping and rocking with you, but you got to make sure your circle is actually going around and not just you giving away everything you got. Not you just giving your energy away. Not you just doing everything for everybody else. Not you just trying to impress somebody that's never going to give you the credit that you deserve. Because again, another thing that I've been thinking about is when you go into a situation with your mind made up, because a lot of times people are already thinking about the result. They're already going in and saying, this is going to happen. Whether it's going to happen or not is irrelevant at this moment, but they've convinced themselves already. So when you go into a situation with your mind made up and convinced and solidified, guess what? Your mind will start making up facts. It will make up facts. It will make up facts and cause you to act in ways to avoid the real facts. So what do I mean by that? Somebody's studying for the test. They're utilizing a book. They're utilizing a program. They're doing all these things that people told them are great. They're going through the questions. They're doing great. They're doing awesome. They're building themselves up. They're like, woo! But then they start going into difficult questions. So let's say you come into one of my study groups and people are like, damn, these questions are tough. Yes, they are. But the problem is, and somebody will break it down about how somebody told them of anytime that you see right to self-determination, safety, feelings, gather information, child protective services, adult protective services, it says first, next, best, most. I need to only look at those details. Guess what? They try to use those strategies and it's like, they're on their back. And they're like, whoa, you're wrong, Phil. You don't even want me to pass. This other person's giving me easy questions and making me feel good. You're putting me through hell and difficult questions. I'm getting ticked off, but you're not getting ticked off at the right situation. You're getting ticked off at me. You're getting ticked off at who you should be in the future. But who you're really ticked off at is the person that you were in the past and allowing for those situations and strategies to solidify. But you have to start assigning the blame in the right place. Because again, when you go into a situation with a made up mind, your mind is going to start making up facts and impact how you act to solidify and avoid the real situation. So again, somebody starts getting a ton of questions wrong. Guess what they particularly do? They fall back into their comfort questions and they start getting the results that make them feel good. But the problem is the exam doesn't care if you feel good or not. The exam is going to come in and kick it in and be like, woo, you ready today? You ready to show up or what? But the problem is people don't show up to the test. They don't show up to the test. They show up and try to show the exam all the results they got in the past of like, you know what? I was successful. I got the degrees. I got all these accomplishments. I got all these awards. All these clients think I'm the greatest person in the country. I got in all these prestigious situations. But the problem is the exam doesn't care about all that. It doesn't mean that you're not a good person. It doesn't mean that you haven't succeeded. But the problem is you're willing to throw your accomplishments at the test versus you trying to accomplish how to break down the test. So you're having a breakdown in the test versus breaking down the test. And that's the biggest problem that a lot of times people have. And how this relates to accommodations is you're not willing to focus on the things you need to focus on to equalize the playing field. You'd rather look at all the things that you're good at versus all the things you're not succeeding in to hide who you are. But guess what? This exam's here to collect. This exam is here to collect and be like, will the real person please show up? Because it will exploit all the things that you've been hiding. If you're somebody that struggles with negative self-talk, you're somebody that struggles with beating yourself down, you're somebody that struggles with relying on other people, guess what? It's going to blow up and amplify because you feel like you need assistance, but you're not willing to reach out for assistance because your ego's standing in the way and saying you shouldn't need this. Or, man, you should have passed the test already, so it doesn't even matter what you get on there. Just go in there and put it in the reps. Or, man, I would rather break down 1,000 questions versus break down a couple and see why I'm getting killed. But that's the problem is people tend to overcompensate in one area. Again, shout out to Freud, to make up for another area. What's that called? Compensation. I would rather describe all the things that I'm good at than all the things I'm bad at. But you have to be willing to look at the things that you're bad at and say that's an improvement area. Because nobody's bad at anything. The only difference between somebody that is proficient or good at something and somebody that's bad at it is the exposure level the person has. Because a lot of times we're looking up at people and saying, you know what? That person's successful. Man, that person's really great. Man, that person's doing awesome. But they don't see the reps that it took to get there. So for example, a lot of times people are like, man, Phil, you're kind of smart. You're kind of a genius. I love how you break this stuff down. Man, you're super motivational. Man, I wish I could be you. But you weren't there what it felt like not to be in this position. You weren't there when I was being degraded. You weren't there when I'm negatively talking myself. You're not there when I'm like, man, you suck. There's other people helping people pass the test better than you are. But the problem is I can't rate myself. So if you're rating yourself based on this test, you got to throw that away, because you can only rate yourself on the situation at hand. Why? Because not every situation is built for you. Not every situation or way of doing things are built for you. You just got to stay in your lane. Because at the end of the day, you have to be 100% good at being who you are, and the rest will come afterwards. So all of this stuff is related to what you need to do. But way too many times people are going to hide behind what they know. They're going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to do what they told me to do. I can't listen to me. Obviously, this exam's not based on real practice. This exam is based on real practice. The only problem is you become such an expert in what you think that you know that you're not even open to new information. But again, information is what is going to change your situation. Information is where you're going to inform what you're going to do in the future. But the problem is you become such a stone wall of like, this is what the answer must be. I see feelings in that answer. I don't even have to fully read the answer. I don't even have to fully read the question. But what sense does that make? What sense does it make for you not to respect something when you want to be respected? Because again, I've always been taught, you want to be respected, you have to give respect in the way that you want to be respected. So you're going in the test like it doesn't mean nothing, and guess what? The test is going to act like you don't mean nothing. It's going to look at you and say, what? You think you can win an award? You think you can just lay on your accomplishments? Guess what? I'm about to lay a handle on you, and I'm about to kick your chest directly in versus you coming in and murdering me. So that's where you have to start reminding yourself, I got to embrace who I am. I can't be somebody else. I can't be doing what that person does. I can't be doing all this stuff. I got to be who I am. Why? Because I've been put on this planet to do exactly what I've been told to do. I can't challenge that. I can't say, I don't want to be me, because guess what? You don't get to pick that. The only thing you get to pick is what you do to become you. But if you're going to somebody else and saying, I need you to develop who I am, that's the problem, because that person's going to develop you into them. They're going to tell you everything that they want you to do. So when you don't get where you want to go, you're not blaming them. You're blaming yourself of like, yep, I must be the problem. I must be the issue. But the problem is, the issue is that you're so reliant on the feedback from somebody else that you're not willing to feed yourself into being the best possible version of yourself. You're looking at somebody else and saying, please affirm me. But the problem with the affirmation is you're trying to get something that somebody else believes, but it may not be valuable to them. They may not think you're good. They may not think you're great. They may not listen to what you got to say. But guess what? You got to listen to what you got to say, because at the end of the day, you're the one that manufactures the ideas that you got. You're the one that knows everything about yourself. So don't limit yourself. That's all I got to say is don't limit yourself. Why? Because if you start limiting yourself based on what other people are telling you to do, you'll never be anything else besides what they are. Because we are limited by the situations and opportunities and what we are told. We are limited by what we are told and what we are exposed to. Don't let the exposure kill you. Because something that's overexposed is blown out. Don't blow yourself out of the picture. You deserve to be in that picture. That's why everybody's always clowning like, man, Phil's always telling jokes. I'm not telling jokes. I'm just trying to make it a way that you can insert this in your life without it being too painful. That's why I'm always like, man, you're ready to take your picture in the exam? Most people are like this. Don't do that. Because that's your attitude towards the test. How you should do it is because you celebrate. You need to celebrate who you are, whether you succeed or not. That's why my favorite quote that I've ever said, the words that I still think about every single day is, it does not matter who you are. It does not matter who you are based on what you do. It does not matter what you do. It matters who you are while doing it. So what that means is your identity doesn't come from what you do. Your identity comes from who you are while doing it. If you're genuine, you're honest, you're willing to make adaptations, you're willing to take feedback, you're willing to correct the things that you know aren't right, guess what? You're going to become the best possible version of yourself. But if you're somebody that's like, you know what? I'm so firm in what I do that nobody can't tell me nothing. I'm not willing to make any changes at all. Guess where you're going to end up? Firmly placed in where you've been exposed to. You're not going to expand the next version of yourself. You're not going to upgrade your family. You're not going to upgrade your knowledge. That's the problem. Is so many people are so tied into who they think that they should be that they lose who they are. So don't let that be you. Don't let this exam change you. Don't let any opportunities or anything change you. So that's why my biggest push today is, even if it's outside of accommodations, you got to listen to what you know. You got to do what you know is right. Just because you're not reading that book like other people are telling you to read it, don't worry about that. Just because you're doing wacky things doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Why? Because every single time that I do something, somebody's probably like, man, that Phil dude's kind of weird. Or, man, that dude's pretty loud. Or, man, I just wish he would stick to what he knows. But that's not what makes me who I am. It's quick review, or, and you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what you're looking at. Bad moves, bad vibes. Hey guys, it's Phil coming at you with another video today. That is what represents who I am. So don't let anybody challenge that. Because if somebody's looking from the outside, they don't understand where you're coming from. And they hell of us don't know where you're going. Because if somebody's trying to tell you what you're capable of, you just got to thank them and be like, man, I thank you for that feedback, but I ain't hearing it today. Because I need to hear it from somebody that's where I want to be. Not that way I become them, but I'm going to develop who I am in the light of what they are shining. I'm going to make adaptations in a way that makes sense for me. I no longer have to impress anybody. I no longer have to compare myself to anybody. I no longer have to do anything because you never know when your time is up. You never know. You never know when somebody's going to be like, you're dead today. And you're like, man, I had so many things that I wanted to do. Don't wait. Don't wait to have that conversation with somebody. Don't wait to make that call to somebody. Don't wait to take your test. Don't wait to make accommodations. Don't wait to do what you think you need to be doing, because at the end of the day, we don't know what we're going to get done. But what we do know is what you put in today will either grow or perish in the subsequent days if we don't adhere to that. So that is my push for you today. Either apply for accommodations on the test or make accommodations to your life to make it fit to where you're at. So if you're hearing that you should study for 8 hours a day, but you know damn well that you ain't got the time, that's okay. And if you're only able to study for 10 minutes, guess what? That's okay. Why? Because you're better focused to doing 10 minutes versus forcing yourself, neglecting sleep, neglecting family time, neglecting exercise, neglecting all of these things that you need to be doing, that you're not actually showing up to the test. So that's my push. Be you, be you, be you, be you, be you. Don't be them. Because again, it's not what you do that makes you who you are. It's who you are while doing it. Embrace who you are and avoid racing against other people, because when you do that, you're going to become them. Don't go into situations with a made-up mind, so that way your mind is not going to be making up facts and cause you to act in a way to avoid the real facts. Do what you think is right. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you guys made it to this point in the video. And if you did, like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. I love every single one of you guys. And I'm going to keep trying my best to give as much as I got. If you have any questions or anything, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. Hope to see you in individual tutoring, the one-day course, Sunday study groups, as well as there's going to be a free study group coming up within the next couple weeks, so be ready for that. As well as, if you haven't already, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, share it with somebody. Like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. I love you guys. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'll see you guys in the next video, and peace out, guys.